I have a really very difficult topic, that is ethical issues in medical research. I'm not going to talk on um, Veronica. On my screen, I cannot see the time. So I would be grateful if you reminded me when 5 minutes were remaining. Okay.
Yes, ma'am. Sure.
So, ethical issues, Dr. Alka Pandya madam had one single slide on ethical issues. And Dr. Subarna has spoken on ethical issues in the writing papers. But what about ethical issues when we are doing the study? Now, what you have to see, this is the outline of the program. Veronica has already spoken about me. Then I'll speak about ethics, a little bit of the history, ICMR guidelines, the case studies, a short quiz. So, my current interest, along with preventive oncology, is fetal medicine and gynec ultrasound. What is ethics? Ethics is basically a basic condition of the human mind which is affected by their lifestyle, arises from the Greek ethos, which decides right from wrong. What are Kantian ethics? Desjardins has said it that it requires that we treat people as ends and never simply as means or as subjects and never simply as objects. Basically, what it means is what the Bible says, treat your neighbor as yourself. You need to be empathic to the other person. The first step in the evolution of ethics is a sense of solidarity with other human beings. This was said by Albert Sweeter. Now, what is the moral problem in clinical research? The moral problem is that the goal of clinical research is generation of useful knowledge about human health and illness. Benefit to participants is not the only purpose of research, although it does occur. And people are the means to developing useful knowledge and are thus at the risk of exploitation. Why this question has come up? Because of the atrocities and the exploitation of human beings. When the Jews were exploited in Germany in the Second World War, after that, after the Nuremberg trials, 23 doctors had to stand in the dock for inhuman trials, and the Nuremberg Code was made. After that came the Helsinki Declaration in 64. Then the US Code of Federal Regulations in 74, when unethical HIV trial was done on more than 300 people. The National Research Act and IRB system was developed. The Belmont report came in, and the latest is the ICMR guidelines in the year 2000 and 2006. They have been modified. So this is the history of ethics. The ICMR guidelines are freely downloadable and available for everyone to see. So I will be actually explaining only this first slide. And after that, I'm going to skip everything else. What we have to understand is what are the general principles of ethics. Every research has some inherent probabilities of harm and risk. And thus, the protection of research participants or communities should be built into the design of the study. Number two, while conducting biomedical and health research, the four basic principles. Number one, respect for persons or autonomy. Number two, beneficence. Third is non-maleficence. And fourth is justice. Must guide research in order to protect the dignity, rights, safety, and well-being of research participants. The ethical committees must ensure that the research is conducted in accordance with the basic principles. The four basic principles that we all have to remember: autonomy, beneficence, non-maleficence, and justice. And the basic principles have been expanded into 12 general principles that are applicable to all biomedical and health research involving human participants or research using biological material or data. All this is included in research. So these are the principles of essentiality, voluntariness, non-exploitation, social responsibility, ensuring privacy and confidentiality, risk minimization, professional competence, maximization of benefit, institutional arrangements, transparency and accountability, totality of responsibility, and principle of environmental protection. So what when you see this, it covers the four basic things which can be expanded into these 12. And what are the general ethical issues? You have to have the benefit risk assessment. This is important. And when you're starting a research, usually you do not have that much data to do the benefit risk assessment. And therefore, when you're going to do a research, you have to read the evidence, you have to reference the literature, read to find out what others are saying. How much is the risk benefit ratio? If the risks are much higher than the benefit, you do not proceed with the study. The process of informed consent, privacy and confidentiality, distributive justice. Once the results have come in and they are good, then who gets the benefit? Do the study subjects get a benefit or not? Do they get paid for participation? If something goes wrong, then are they compensated for research related harm? Do they get ancillary care? Is there any conflict of interest? That means you've taken your own patient and that patient is so afraid that the doctor will be pissed off that under pressure, under coercion, that patient gets enrolled in the study. Selection of vulnerable and special groups as research participants, community engagement, and post research access and benefit sharing. These are the general ethical issues that have to be built in into the research proposal. So the research proposal is not just, the topic of the research and then what are the material and methods and what are the expected outcomes. No, you have to also work these ethical issues into your presentation. For that, an EC has to be made, the ethical committee has to be made, and these are the members. Chairperson or vice chairperson is optional, which could be a well respected person from any background but who has a prior experience of having served in an ethical committee. Then member secretary, affiliated, should be a staff member of the institution, should have knowledge and experience in clinical research and ethics, be motivated and have good communication skills, should be able to devote adequate time to this activity, which should be protected by the institution. This is very important. Whenever any medical legal problem rises, the institution has to face it and not the person. The basic medical scientist, non-medical or medical person with qualifications in basic medical sciences. In case of EC reviewing clinical trials for drugs, the basic medical scientist should preferably be a pharmacologist. Then the clinicians, who could be affiliated or non-affiliated, but they should be individuals with recognized medical qualification, expertise, and training. Legal experts should have a basic degree in law from a recognized university with experience. Desirable is a training in medical law. A social scientist, philosopher, ethicist, theologian could be affiliated or non affiliated, should be an individual with social, behavioral science, philosophy, religious qualification and training or expertise, and be sensitive to local culture and moral values. Can be from an NGO involved in health related activities, and a layperson who is non affiliated. This layperson should be literate who has not pursued medical science or health related career in the last 5 years. He or she may be a representative of the community and aware of the local language, cultural and moral values of the community. It is desirable that he should be involved in social and community welfare activities. When a protocol is submitted before the ethical committee, then what are the ethical issues that have to be assessed? Whether the protocol is breaking any social values, what is the risk benefit risk assessment, Is there any payment for participation in kind or cash? Is the community going to be disturbed? Community considerations, disclosure of conflict of interest, plans for medical management and compensation for study related injury, scientific design and conduct of the study, selection and recruitment of participants, protection of privacy and confidentiality, review of the informed consent process, and qualification of researchers and adequacy of study sites. What are the elements of an informed consent? This is very, very important because lots of court cases hang on this and research hangs on the informed consent. There should be a statement mentioning that it is research, the purpose, the methods, duration, frequency, and methods. What is the benefit to the participant, the community, or to others? What are the foreseeable risks, discomforts, or inconvenience? What is the confidentiality of the records? Is there any payment or reimbursement for participation, treatment and compensation for injury, freedom to participate or withdraw, and identity of the research team and the contact persons that person has to contact in case of problem? All this has to be built into a research proposal, and this has to be reviewed by the ethical committee in an informed consent. The optional elements are: what are the alternative procedures of treatment available? Is there any insurance coverage? Is it a possible stigmatizing condition? Then, when we are concerned about biological material and data, including current and future use, like the embryos are frozen and there's nobody to claim them, or there are sperms and ova frozen, period of storage, secondary use, sharing of data and biological sample, right to prevent use of biological sample, provision to safeguard confidentiality, post-research plan, benefit sharing, and then if there is a plan of publication, the status of photographs or pedigrees or videography, all this has to be added. There are certain conditions in which waiver of consent can be given when the research cannot be carried out without the waiver and the waiver is scientifically justified. Retrospective studies where participants are de-identified or cannot be contacted, research on anonymized biological samples or data, certain types of public health service studies, surveillance programs, program evaluation studies, research on data available in the public domain, or research during humanitarian emergencies and disasters when the participant may not be in a position to give consent. Attempt should be made to obtain the participant's consent at the earliest. What you have to understand is that supposing a consent has been taken from a person when that person is incapacitated, consent has to be taken later when that big person becomes capable. You cannot go by it. This is a set of case studies that I have taken from CRC. And this study, just have a look. All these principles are okay to look at. But when we are presented a situation, what happens? One person is recruited to participate in a clinical trial by oncologist. That person has cancer and traditional treatments have only been intermittently successful. The clinical trial is randomized, single-blinded, placebo-controlled study of a drug that may be beneficial to a patient with the kind of cancer that he has. The duration is 1 year. After 6 months, the patient is getting worse and ask the doctor that, in which arm am I? If I'm in the placebo, I want to go into the treatment arm so that I can have a better life. Now, what does that doctor do? It is a single blinded trial, so the doctor knows whether the patient is getting placebo or drug. So he knows that this patient is getting placebo. But can he shift? This is one problem. This is another study. About a community, a major study to determine whether Gilead Sciences antiretroviral tenofovir disoproxil fumarate would be an effective preventive against HIV infection. It was to be done on 960 sex workers, funded by the US National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases. But NGOs did not accept this because they said that the women who became positive during the trial would not be offered treatment. So they said that Gilead ceased taking sex workers from developing countries as cheap guinea pigs. Now here, is it wrong or is it right? Then there is another case study where for an antidepressant, a herbal therapy, an allopathic drug, and a placebo are being compared. So is it ethical? There's another treatment where a rotavirus tetravalent vaccine was licensed in the US after RCT in developed countries showed 60% efficacy in preventing diarrhea. But after approval, it was withdrawn because of cases of interception, 1 in 10,000. Now they are planning an RCT in developing countries. Should it happen? 600,000 kids die of rotavirus diarrhea in developing countries. So should the trial be planned? This is another ethical study. So what are the ethical problems? These are the four basic problems. Physician as investigator, ethics of randomization and blinding, ethical issues with preliminary data, and ethical use of a placebo. So there is a rampant tendency to confuse research with care, the so-called therapeutic misconception, a failure to distinguish between ethics of clinical research and ethics of medical practice. So medical practice has to be done according to Helsinki Declaration. It is the duty of the physician to promote and safeguard the health of patients, including those who are involved in medical research. The physician's knowledge and conscience are dedicated to fulfillment of his duty. And the health of my patient will be my first consideration. In this case, now you have the answer to your first question. But again, it mugs up the research. The physician may combine medical research with medical care only to the extent that the research is justified by its potential preventive, diagnostic, or therapeutic value. And if the physician has good reason to believe that participation in the research study will not adversely affect the health of the patient who serves as research subjects. So in the first case, the cancer patient, he can opt out of the study. Clinical trial differs from medical care. The purpose, the methods, the justification of risk, and the relationship between investigators and research subjects. Here, the medical care is individualized, methods are routine, and it gives benefits to the patients. Research is an advanced medical knowledge for society. There is randomization, there is blinding, there are restrictive doses, and tests to measure study outcomes. And the justification of the risk is anticipated by the knowledge to be gained. So the aims are different, and therefore a doctor who is a researcher is going to be in a soup. Confusion between research and practice, this is prevalent. It interferes with realizing valid informed consent, diverts attention from moral conflict inherent in clinical research, and obstructs development of a conception of professional integrity proper to clinical research. So even if you design the research, the investigator has to be different. So what should a physician do? Understand that clinical research, while socially valuable, is ethically challenging. Be aware of the moral tension inherent in dual role. Inform the subject accordingly and separate the roles of clinician and investigator where possible. Separate clinic, rely on other members of the team, refer to other investigator for trial. Now, RCT. RCT has random assignment and then there is blinding. These are to maximize study validity, but has ethical problems. Preferences
5
for
minutes more.
treatments. Okay. Preferences for treatment and information about which treatment a subject is receiving are relevant to autonomous decisions. If I don't know what treatment I'm getting, how do I decide? Information about which treatment the subject is receiving may be important in managing an adverse event or a medical emergency, consistent with a concern about safety and welfare. So, now what to do? Informed consent is important. Have procedure to allow breaking of the blind and have a procedure to handle emergency. This is all your ethical responsibility. In the course of most RCTs, preliminary data are being accumulated, and if subjected to monitoring or interim analysis, they indicate one therapy is more effective, one therapy seems to be more safe, or the other is associated with severe adverse effects, no emerging trend, and the treatment any benefit is unlikely, you can stop the trial early after preliminary data. This is an example where end stage renal failure, there was two systems inserted and the end point was peritonitis. So is it ethical? Is it ethical? This is another study where 17,187 subjects with acute myocardial infarction were randomized to streptokinase or placebo. They found streptokinase decreases the death rate. Ethical implication was that clearly streptokinase was superior long before the trial was concluded. Now the sponsor says that we had decided 5 years, so we declared the results in 5 years. But the ethics committee is asking them that 500 unnecessary deaths have occurred out of the 17,000. So how is it justifiable? And this is one example of when trade takes charge. Under what circumstances must an RCT be terminated because continuation would be unethical? Most subjects, must subjects be informed of emerging trends? Must subjects be informed of possibility of SAE? Now, what the Nuremberg Code Article 10 says, that during the course of the experiment, the scientist in charge must be prepared to terminate the experiment at any stage if he has probably cause to believe in the exercise of good faith, superior skill, and careful judgment required of him, that a continuation of the experiment is likely to result in injury, disability, or death to the experimental subject. This is Nuremberg Code 1949 and Declaration of Helsinki, paragraph 18. Physicians may not be involved in a research study involving human subjects unless they are confident that the risks have been adequately assessed and can be satisfactorily managed. When the risks are found to outweigh the potential benefits or when there is conclusive proof of definitive outcomes, physicians must assess whether to continue, modify, or stop the study. So, what should we do now? Full disclosure, non-disclosure, or consent to incomplete disclosure? Full disclosure is not a option because you have to do a double blinded study. Non-disclosure is also not acceptable. So now what happens? We give incomplete disclosure. For incomplete disclosure, there are 2 points. Protocol must state explicitly that interim results are to be held confidential. Subjects must be informed that interim results are not to be revealed to them or to anybody else until RCT has reached a conclusion as specified in the original protocol. Only then is it possible. But is this really ethically acceptable? As the example of the heart patients and the renal patients? An independent data monitoring committee is the answer to this, that will validate the data, that will check the data, and will find out whether that data is going anywhere to continue the study or not, or when to take a subject away from the study. Now, the use of placebo, is it ethical? It makes blinding possible. It allows for placebo effect and measures absolute efficacy. Now you can see a 12-week study on migraine, and you can see in this graph all three are absolutely parallel. Now, which one is the placebo group? You cannot make out. They are almost the same. So placebo also works. So if ineffective treatment exists, use of placebo may deprive individual of treatment that they may need. On the other hand, experimental treatment without proof of superiority may cause harm or is at best useless. So again, the Helsinki Declaration, the use of placebo or no treatment is acceptable in studies where no current proven intervention exists, or where for compelling and scientifically sound methodological reasons, the use of placebo is necessary to determine the efficacy or safety of an intervention, and the patients who receive placebo or no treatment will not be subject to any risk of serious or reversible harm. So in a cancer patient, you cannot do this. So now what are you going to do here? This is a chart that summarizes everything. When there is no standard treatment, new evidence, question standard treatment, subject refractory or refuse standard treatment, placebo as add-on, there's no ethical problem. You can go on. Use of placebo in place and standard treatment, risk of irreversible harm is there, you cannot go. Use of placebo is risky or placebo response is predictable, use alternative design. Now, if the risky use of placebo is there, risk minimization measures, escape criteria, and rescue treatment have to be in place. Study social and scientific value, evaluate the subject's altruism. Would a reasonable person consent to be randomized? If the answer is yes, then go ahead. So, Claude Bernard said, "It is immoral then to make an experiment on man when it is dangerous to him, even though the results may be useful to others." He was the first to suggest the use of blind experiments to ensure objectivity in scientific observations. Authority versus observation. When we meet a fact which contradicts a prevailing theory, we must accept the fact and abandon the theory, even when the theory is supported by great names and generally accepted. Theories are only hypotheses, verified by more or less numerous facts. Those verified by most facts are the best, but even when they are never final, never to be absolutely believed. Proof that a given condition always precedes or accompanies a phenomena does not warrant concluding with certainty that a given condition is the immediate cause. It must still be established when that condition is removed, that phenomena will no longer appear. So I think this is it. There are 3 questions, which is a kind of quiz. You can read them quick and see if you can answer them correctly. If you have understood the ethical problems, you'll be able to do. A rheumatologist developed a monoclonal antibody that he believed is likely to be effective in rheumatoid arthritis treatment. It has successfully moved through phase 1 and 2 tests, designed for phase 3, comparing to placebo as an add-on therapy for patients already on standard therapy. Now, the ethics would require A, can't be involved in the design of this trial. B, can be involved in research design. 3, can enroll subjects, but only if he can honestly say that he is personally undecided. And 4, can enroll subjects into the trial as long as he can honestly say that the community of rheumatologists is undecided about whether the new drug is effective. Now you can have your answers in your head, and I go to the next question. When explaining the probability of assignment to trial arms in consent forms, which is true, FDA requires the probability to be expressed as percentage chance. The use of a placebo arm does have to be specifically stated, but not the chance of assignment. ICH knows that it should be included, but does not specify how the information should be presented. And the probability of assignment should always be stated as being like the flip of a coin. This is question number 2. And the third is the major purpose of random assignment in a clinical trial. Ensure that the study subjects are representative of the general population. Create treatment groups that are similar with respect to both measured and unmeasured covariates. Facilitate double blinding. Guard against investigator bias in the allocation of study participants, and facilitate the measurement of outcome variables. You can have more than one right answer. So If you have been able to answer these correctly, I will show you the answers now. Question 1 is 1 and 2. Question 2 is 2 and 4. And question 3 is 1, 3 and 5. So if you have been able to answer these correctly, you've got ethical issues. Thank you.